You have a 1.5 Fusion with a coolant leak that looks like that. What's with Tone here, guys, and today I have a 2016 1.5 liter Ford Fusion, and this thing has a coolant leak. Now this has a transverse engine, so it sits sideways, and the coolant leak is coming down right in the front of the engine, right down through the compressor. You'll see it on the oil pan and on the compressor, like I showed you at the very beginning. Now this is a buried thermostat. I mean, you can't hardly see, well, you can't see the thermostat. Even with a mirror, you can barely see it. It's got some hoses. We got to disconnect a bunch of stuff to get to this thermostat, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Before we do, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the bell. You get notified of all my future content, which you definitely don't want to miss. All right, let's go replace this thermostat housing. First step in doing this thermostat, you got to go ahead and take off your caps here, and you got to recover the coolant because we got to remove the compressor. And then go ahead and take off your degas bottle cap. And then we're going to lift it in the air. You got to get the drive belt off. Go ahead and take off your main undercover here. And then you're going to want to go ahead and take off this front one here because you want to get to the petcock here. And the petcock is right there. And it drains right down here. And unfortunately, with this cover on, this cover comes all the way to here. So it would just run onto this cover. So just pull the plug, let that drain. We're going to come over here and we need to get the belt off. So you can just go up through here and we just got to get to the tensioner there and move the tensioner to get this belt off. Let's go up through here with a 17 right there. And you push the tensioner forward and slip the belt off. And then disconnect that electrical connector. Go ahead and disconnect the battery. So you can use a long wrench and loosen the 10 mil under there, and you can just lift up the negative cable and slide it off over here without taking this cowl off or removing the battery. Next thing we're gonna do is take off the alternator here. So you already got the belt off. So now we got to get the wiring disconnected here, get the B positive, and get the electrical connector off and get the bolts out. So you're going to have a 15 millimeter bolt that goes in the front of the engine that way. And then you're going to have one bolt like on this side. And then this one should be a stud with a nut. This one came out as one big long assembly. So we're going to have that. And the alternator is going to come out just like this. So pop this connector loose here and it gives you a little more room. You have to pull this AC line forward. And then you can pull this out. And you can see where the thermostat is leaking right there at that seam. And go ahead and mark all your hoses. I always mark all the hoses with a paint marker. So that way when I put it back together, I know that as long as it lines up with my paint, it's not going to leak. So for a very long time, hose clamps, I used to take the clamps that you have to squeeze. I used to take those off the hoses and I used to put worm drive clamps on. For probably the first like 13 years of my career, I did that, maybe even longer. I always did that. And then you would find that cars would come back and you would be doing an oil change and, you know, maybe it was a car you did head gaskets on or something. And then you notice that the hose clamps are seeping, you tighten them up. Then I went to work at a shop where we were not allowed to use worm drive clamps. We only reused the factory clamps. When I first started doing it, I would try to remember where the clamp was by looking at the indentation in the hose. And I got kind of tired of doing that. So I thought, you know what? Maybe I'll put a mark across that and see how that works. That worked fantastic. When I started doing that, I had like a 99% success rate. Only sometimes is there an issue, but almost never. You take the clamps off and you put them back on exactly where they were. When you've got that line, there's no question of where that clamp was. And when you do that, that clamp goes right back where it was and it flexes with heat, doesn't leak. Just trust me. Get the oil-based paint markers, put a line, no question, quick, just move it over, you're done, move on to the next hose. So now we can see a couple points we need to disconnect. We need to take out this upper compressor bolt here. There's also a bolt back there. And then we can disconnect the two AC lines, which are right through there. And then once you do that, you're going to have to disconnect the coolant hoses right there. So go ahead and take off this hose first, and then we can get access to this hose. We got to take these two off from here, and then we can get ready to get the compressor out of the way. So once we get this hose off, then we can reach through here and we can move the clamp back. Then we can get this hose disconnected. And now we can get to this upper bolt on the compressor over here. We can also pull the AC lines off now, and we can get to this upper bolt right there. So you got to take off a 10 millimeter off of that stud right there that holds the AC line on. Now the AC line that's on the driver's side of the compressor, you can't get that off because of the cooling fan. So what we're going to do is we're going to lower the compressor and then slip it off. The one on the passenger side, you can slip that off the compressor because we're going to pull that up out of the way. That bolt right there, the driver's side most top bolt on the compressor, it doesn't come all the way out because of the AC line. So we're going to leave it like that. This one, you can take it out. You just have to move the hoses to get it out. So now that we've got those two hoses disconnected and the AC compressor disconnected up top, now we're going to go underneath. So here's the AC line that's on the passenger side, most of the compressor. This is what that bracket is attached to. So now that we've got all this out of the way, we're going to go ahead and undo this bolt. We're going to lower the compressor, and then we're going to slip the other AC line off right there. So when you get your compressor out, it's going to look like this. You're going to have that bolt in there. So it's really hard to get this line out of the hole. You have to push the compressor up and then wiggle it and twist and use a screwdriver and push. It's because of this stud right here. The line has to come up so far up this stud that it hits the cooling fan. And I tried to take this out. This bolt does not want to come out, and you don't want to break it. So we just took it out like it is. And so now you can see, we can see the bottom of the thermostat housing is right there. Where that blue line is, we need to disconnect that lower hose right there. And then we can drop it down and take the thermostat out from up top. We're going to disconnect that connector right there, that green connector, because the thermostat housing has to slide back quite a bit because of a stud. It sits on a stud. Little hard to tell, but that clamp right there, I got it depressed and it's opened up. So now we got to slide the clamp off and slide this hose off so we can get that nut off and slide this thermostat housing out of here. All right, so once you get the nut off, the thermostat housing can't slide back far enough to get off the stud, so you have to take the stud out. It's a Torx. Once you loosen it up, you can get it out with your fingers. It's just kind of hard. What I ended up doing was I would move it with these little 4-inch little Knipex Cobra pliers, and then I would turn it a little bit, and it would get stuck, and I would turn it. And so now we should be able to pull this housing off and out of here. I'm just going to drop mine in the coolant bucket. Well, I'll just show you the new one. So here's the new one. And what was leaking was this seam right here between the outside and the inside. It's all one piece. So it was leaking there. That's where we were leaking from. So now we got an O-ring here. You got a Motorcraft one. So here's the part number for the one that I got. So now we just got to clean out that hole and lube up that O-ring and slide it back in. Here's what I use to lube up O-rings, just Seal Glide. You can get all different kinds. Used to use Napa for years. You just lube up that O-ring. Don't use any silicone. Don't use any sealant. Just lube up your O-ring. This O-ring is designed to seal. And now we're going to slide this in the hole, and then we got to get that Torx back in there. All right, so once you get the housing back in, go ahead and tighten this nut down. This nut's a lock nut, so you're just going to snug it up. Remember, this is just holding it up against the block. It's got no ring. So we're going to go in reverse order, hook up your big hose. Then we need to go down below, put your compressor back in. We got to work it all back in the opposite direction, in the opposite order that we went through. Make sure all your hose clamps are back exactly where they were because you don't want to have a leak under here and have to take this all back apart. So one last thing not to forget is don't forget to plug this connector back in right there. That would really suck to have to take this whole thing apart because you forgot this connector. There you go. And then replace all your AC seals so they don't leak. After watching this video, I'm sure you're going to be just as surprised as I was at how much stuff had to come off to get this thermostat housing out and just how difficult it was to get out. Because once you gain access, you still got to get those hoses disconnected. There's nowhere for them to go. The AC compressor line doesn't come off the compressor like normal. So it was a lot of fun to do this job. I'm happy to have helped you guys. Drop a comment down below and let me know if you've replaced one of these or if you have a coolant leak in this area. Thanks for watching. See you guys next time.